Before Atlantis rose, before pyramids pierced the sky, there was another world, older, wiser, luminous, with divine harmony. Lemuria was not a myth. It was a cradle of consciousness, where beings walked not just with technology, but with telepathy, song, and soul. A civilization in tune with earth, stars, and source. But perfection, even in paradise, is fragile. What happens when unity fractures? When curiosity becomes ego? This is not just history. It is a mirror, a reflection of what was and what could be again. Journey now into the lost chronicles of Lemuria, and remember, some echoes are not myths, they are memories waiting to awaken. In the beginning, Lemuria was forged in fire. Massive volcanic eruptions birthed islands that joined to form a supercontinent. The Lemurians, tall, ethereal beings, emerged not through evolution, but through divine seeding by celestial architects from the Pleiades and Sirius. The Earth was young, and so were they. They built crystalline cities powered by the Earth's magnetic field and celestial energy. They spoke in frequencies. Their thoughts shaped matter. The land itself breathed with consciousness, and time flowed like liquid light. Lemurians walked among towering crystal flora, each pulsing with life force. They lived for centuries, learning to manipulate energy, consciousness, and time. Trees responded to their emotions. The oceans sang when they gathered in prayer. Lemuria became a living organism, its energy flowing like blood in veins. Sky beasts flew through pink clouds above crystal towers. Rain fell in rainbows. The people of Lemuria danced barefoot on glowing moss, feeling one with the cosmos. They could speak to stars and feel the heartbeat of galaxies. The very act of dreaming shaped their world. Underwater cities connected to those on land, forming a grid of divine geometry. Light bridges spanned mountains, while floating gardens harvested the energy of stars. Healing was achieved not by medicine, but by harmonic resonance. Illness, being a disturbance of frequency, was retuned by singing bowls and sacred symbols. Crystal pyramids dotted the horizon, acting as portals to higher realms and energy amplifiers. These structures were not only architectural marvels, but spiritual beacons. Pilgrimages to these sacred sites were considered journeys of transformation. The Lemurians had no concept of death in the way we understand it. Transition from one life to another was a celebration, emerging with the universal soul. Funerals were ceremonies of light, where the body dissolved into pure energy and ascended. Communication extended beyond Earth. Through thought and vibration, Lemurians maintained contact with beings from the Arcturian, Andromedan, and Lyran systems. Councils were held among stars, discussing the destiny of galaxies. And in this blossoming of spirit and light, Lemuria stood tall, not only in its beauty but in its consciousness. This was the first chapter of paradise, untouched, untainted, eternal. For thousands of years, Lemuria thrived in harmony with Earth and the stars. Cities floated above oceans. Forests glowed at night. Lemurians communicated telepathically and coexisted peacefully, guided by the High Council of Nine, spiritual leaders who acted as the bridge between dimensions. Their temples, constructed of glowing crystal, resonated with universal harmonics. These temples allowed astral travel, DNA activation, and communion with beings from higher realms. Time flowed differently in Lemuria. One could meditate for a moment and awaken a century wiser. Knowledge was absorbed through light codes and sacred geometry. Children were born enlightened, their eyes holding ancient starlight. They remembered their past lives and purpose from the moment of birth. Education was soul-deep, aligning the self with universal truth. There were no wars, no hunger, no need for speech. The energy grid beneath the land pulsed with love and wisdom. Celestial beings visited often, sharing knowledge and joy. Councils of dolphins, birds, and sentient trees were consulted in major decisions. Every being, even the wind, had a voice. Festivals of light filled the sky, where stars descended in song. Sacred rituals aligned the people with cosmic cycles. Energy flowed through golden spires and ley lines that connected with Atlantis, Mu, and distant worlds. The balance of masculine and feminine energies was perfect, symbolized in twin flame unions and sacred dances. Lemurian society was not based on currency or ownership, but on spiritual contribution and resonance. The more aligned one was with the source, the more one could shape reality. Artists painted with light, musicians composed silence, and architects designed dreams. Daily life was a blend of meditation, service, creation, and play. Spiritual growth was the only goal. Even agriculture was sacred. Plants were grown by singing to them and harvested in gratitude. The Lemurians understood that reality was a mirror of thought. Their cities evolved not through machines, but through collective consciousness. Whole communities would dream of a building, and it would emerge from the earth, grown rather than built. Peace was not enforced, it was natural. Crime, jealousy, greed, these concepts were as foreign as winter in the tropics. Lemuria's light reached far beyond its shores, influencing the entire biosphere of Earth and beyond. This was the zenith, a world in balance, a people in tune, a civilization shimmering in the light of divine union. But paradise, even divine, is not immune to change. As eons passed, subtle shifts began to ripple through the consciousness of Lemuria. Some Lemurians, once fully unified in collective harmony, started to explore individuality. Curiosity turned inward, and ego was born, not in malice, but in wonder. A sect called the Flame of Separation emerged. They questioned the need for unity, desiring to test the limits of their own will. They sought power not from resonance with Source, but from manipulating it for personal gain. It was a philosophical divergence, not a war, at first. Temples that once sang with harmonics began to silence themselves. The sacred crystals, sensitive to discordant energy, dimmed. The great song of Lemuria, once a chorus, became fractured into scattered notes. The High Council debated endlessly, but could not halt the tide. The Flame of Separation introduced new technology, crystal amplifiers that enhanced psychic ability, but also drained the life force from the land. They tapped into lower astral realms, drawing unstable energy. Their powers grew quickly, feeding ambition. The sacred dolphins that once swam with the Lemurians began to retreat to deeper waters. The birds stopped singing. The trees' auras flickered uncertainly. Gaia herself trembled as dissonance crept into the grid. Still, the greater Lemurian collective held on to peace. They meditated harder, sent healing waves across the land, and appealed to the council. But with each passing cycle, the pull of ego intensified. The duality of choice had entered paradise. Eventually, the Flame of Separation created their own temples, dark, angular constructs lacking harmony. They built beneath the earth and under the sea, hiding their actions from the surface. Forbidden experiments in time-folding and soul-splicing began. Some Lemurians, drawn by power or curiosity, defected. Families divided. Lightships stopped visiting as the frequency of the continent dropped. The sky dimmed, and time began to stutter. Nature, once harmonious, responded with chaos. Then came the first quake. The ocean receded unnaturally, and a vast sinkhole opened in the central valley of Lemuria. The land groaned, a warning unheeded. What was once imbalance had become instability. The golden age had ended. The shadows had arrived. The High Council, once unwavering, now fractured under the weight of disagreement. Some sought to exile the Flame of Separation, while others argued for reconciliation. The Lemurian ethos of unconditional acceptance clashed with the urgency of containment. Arguments turned into psychic storms. The very air crackled with unresolved tension. Crystals cracked under the strain. The sacred grid pulsed erratically, its frequencies disrupted by conflicting intentions. A prophecy emerged from the Temple of the Rose, spoken by a child oracle who had never uttered a word before. If Lemuria divides, the sea shall rise to reunite her in silence. But few listened. As more Lemurians aligned with the separatists, a covert civil war began, not with weapons, but with thought, vibration, and energy. Astral battles raged unseen. Some cities flickered between dimensions, others simply vanished. The Flame of Separation opened portals to other realms, pulling in energies they could not control. Lower dimensional beings entered, offering power in exchange for influence. Corruption seeped into the grid. Once peaceful temples now required protection. Crystal guardians, long dormant, reawakened to defend the sacred sites. Sacred animals began to disappear, retreating into etheric realms. The land wept, manifesting in wild storms and tremors. The people were divided. Some tried to leave Lemuria altogether, teleporting to distant lands or aligning with Atlantis, which was now rising in its own power. Others doubled down, believing Lemuria could be healed. In the final days of unity, the council voted to seal the deepest power centers. But it was too late. A rupture had already formed, an energetic scar across the continent, and then silence. A deep, low hum that resonated across the land, not from the crystals, but from the core of the earth. The planet was responding. As Lemuria struggled with its inner fracture, Atlantis rose across the sea, gleaming, orderly, powerful. Though born of similar celestial origins, Atlantis had chosen a different path. Where Lemuria cherished spiritual harmony, Atlantis pursued intellectual mastery and technology. At first, they were allies. Trade of knowledge flowed between them. But as Lemuria weakened, Atlantis grew bold. Their leaders watched the schism in Lemuria with interest and unease. Some offered help, others plotted annexation. Atlantean envoys arrived, offering to stabilize Lemuria's grid with their advanced crystal engines. The council was split. Some accepted, others feared intrusion. The flame of separation eagerly allied with Atlantis, sharing secrets of Lemuria's inner sanctums. Joint research stations were established. Atlantean machines hummed beneath Lemurian soil. The ley lines were redirected. The earth protested with rumblings and floods. Whispers began of betrayal. Atlantean engineers were found dead. Sabotage or sacrifice. Lemurian elders vanished. The trust between the two civilizations eroded into suspicion. A secret project known as Project Shard was launched. A combined experiment in quantum frequency elevation. The goal was to create a higher dimensional bridge between worlds. But something went wrong. A pulse surged through the earth, knocking birds from the sky and boiling seas in certain regions. Time bubbles appeared, zones where the past and future overlapped. Madness spread among the sensitives. The flame of separation called it ascension. The council called it collapse. Atlantis withdrew, sealing its borders. Lemuria was left with a corrupted grid, destabilized tectonic foundations, and a rising tide of chaotic energy. The final thread of balance had snapped. The Earth, a sentient being, began preparing for reset. The tremors became constant. Volcanoes, long dormant, awakened in fiery chorus. The skies blackened with ash, blocking the ever-glowing sun. Lemuria's crystal towers, once vibrant, now cracked and crumbled under pressure. The oceans swelled unnaturally. Tidal waves, some miles high, began striking coastal cities. Storms raged without end. The energy grid sparked and burned, turning sacred sites into smoking ruins. Animals fled en masse, guided by instinct deeper than memory. Birds vanished from the skies. Dolphins circled frantically near the shores, wailing their mournful songs. The High Council, now reduced to 3, attempted a global healing. Millions joined in meditation, creating a planetary harmonic. For a moment, the Earth paused, but the wound was too deep. Gaia had made her choice. The great quake began from the heart of Lemuria. Mountains split open. Lava swallowed cities. Underwater temples exploded from pressure. The very crust of the planet began to shift. In desperation, Lemurian elders initiated the Arc Codes, soul preservation protocols encoded in crystals. Knowledge, memories, and consciousness were stored and sealed in chambers beneath the earth. A few escaped. Some teleported to inner Earth. Others fled to Mu, the Americas, or Atlantis. Most chose to stay, to sing the final song. As the central continent broke apart, the ocean poured in. Towers collapsed. Forests sank. The final lightship departed as Lemuria vanished beneath the waves. The silence afterward was deafening. Though the land was gone, Lemuria lived on in vibration. The ocean now held its secrets. Survivors spread across the globe, seeding wisdom into new civilizations. India, Egypt, the Andes, Polynesia, they carried the Lemurian frequency, the love of Earth, the memory of unity, the songs of the stars. Atlantis, too, felt the loss. Their scientists mourned what had been a mirror, now broken. Some tried to recover Lemurian tech. Others feared they would share the same fate. In hidden vaults beneath the Himalayas and Andes, Lemurian crystals continued to hum. Occasionally, a child would be born with golden eyes and remember fragments of light, lost songs, a place that no longer existed. The Earth herself absorbed the lessons. Her magnetic field changed. Her tectonic plates realigned. Lemuria had become part of her soul, and in the hearts of those who remember, it still sings. The fall of Lemuria was not just an end. It was a beginning. The Lemurian soul continued its journey, reincarnating in waves across the ages. Many who feel out of place today, drawn to water and stars, are echoes of that ancient world. In the modern age, Lemurian crystals are awakening. Healers, empaths, and mystics channel knowledge they've never studied. The wisdom of harmony, balance, and collective love is returning. Ancient songs encoded in whales and dolphins resurface in dreams. Children speak of cities under the sea. The Earth responds to those who listen. As humanity faces its own crises, environmental, spiritual, energetic, the story of Lemuria serves as both warning and inspiration. We are at a similar precipice. Will we choose ego or unity? The Lemurian frequency calls out not to be worshipped, but to be remembered, and in remembering, healed. Lemuria fell, not by fire alone, but by forgetting who they were. The ocean swallowed their temples, but not their truth. It flows now in whale song, in intuition, in the dreams of those who feel out of place in the modern world. You are not just remembering a continent, you are remembering yourself. As Earth stands once more at a crossroads, the wisdom of Lemuria stirs in the hearts of the sensitive, the seekers, the awakened. This is not just a story, it is a seed, and every time it is told, the frequency rises. Listen, remember, return.